afternoon. Thank you for such a warm welcome, and I'm really excited and privileged to be here today. And as Evgenia has already introduced my topic, I suppose we can move on. Hello, come on in, please. The first thing I would like to share with you is some amazing figures about English. The figure I personally find the most amazing is that 80% of global businesses today say that English is needed for success in business. And I would even say that English is needed for success in life. Research and common sense suggest that there is a lot more to speak in English than the ability to form grammatically correct sentences and then to be able to pronounce them. In other words, when we ask anybody, do you speak English? When our students say, I want to speak English, actually it involves a huge combination of things, right? Including using the appropriate vocabulary, using appropriate grammar, the right body language, and soft skills. Okay, come on in, please. The next, okay, come on in, please. There are some delusions about learning English, and especially about learning speaking English, which I would like to discuss with you. And the first one is you can learn to speak a foreign language quite well without lessons. So when a student comes to me and says, Evgenia, okay, we have classes, everything is fine, but I know what the solution is, what the solution to my progress is. I will go to Malta, stay there, maybe swim, right? Or I will even go to Hawaii, surf, and then English, it will just somehow stick to me. I will pick it up from, right, I will absorb it, I will pick it up just from the ear. Absolutely. Fantastic. Come on in, please. Thank you for coming. And unfortunately, I have to tell them, no guys, it doesn't work this way. You need to take effort. And I always tell them my personal story. My second language at university was Spanish. And I have to admit that my current level is still, after so many years, A2, maybe A2 plus maximum. And I decided to test this famous delusion and try to travel around South America and check. Maybe English will just stick to me, right? Maybe I will just take it, absorb it from the ear. It didn't work, no magic pill. Sure. My result is 2 words, just 2 words. Chicken soup, which I really love, caldo de gallina, and I like hearing, so I still remember how to say ceviche. Nothing. I had to speak Spanish, I really had to, but I didn't take any classes, I did not make any effort. So that's the story I tell my students, and they somehow feel to agree with me. Well, that's what most of our students or teachers maybe say, that we study at school, right, or our students study at school, and when we enter university we are unable to speak a language. The big question is what we really understand by speaking a language. Most of children can take part in typical conversation, like greeting, saying goodbye, maybe ordering food, and they can sometimes even receive classes in English. One more delusion I do love. You must use the language freely to learn to speak it, even if you make a lot of errors. Thank you for coming, Natalia. Okay, so many interactions. Would you like to come in? Okay. So when a student comes to me and says, Evgenia, I know what I want. I want to speak English fluently. But what they do not understand is when we speak about fluency, it's not about making a lot of mistakes, right? If you look at the picture of a lighter, and then can you guess what is that? Right, absolutely. Wow, fantastic. So that's how I tried to show you what accuracy and fluency can be represented and how this message can be communicated to the students. We should not only focus on the flow and efficiency, which is fluency, we should also focus on accuracy, right, which is about choosing appropriate words and appropriate grammar. Well, one more delusion is that we should always correct students' errors, right? And this question of student error correction is really an issue, right? So from school, this red plan and a lot of minuses and a lot of ticks and everything, I myself get demotivated and I receive a lot of criticism. So instead, a good solution here can be to praise any effort of the student to speak, to use more complicated grammar, even if he or she has made a mistake. If we praise an effort, they won't be afraid to speak and to make mistakes. And that's my favorite one. When we are involved in any process, what we expect our progress to look like? This one, I suppose, right? So we just make a little bit of effort and then we just rock it up. Our efforts pay off. What it realistically, but still in an ideal world, looks like. We are making a certain amount of effort, but when we are some kind of stuck. And we should also take into account that we all have good days and bad days, and our perception of any progress is very highly dependent on how we feel, what our emotional status is. So a learning curve would look like this, very volatile. In school, we are very lucky. When we are in school, we have a very clear vector of what we should teach our students and what they should be able to do in terms of speaking. But when we are in the university, when we are teaching in university, and when we are teaching grown-ups, usually goal setting is a real problem, I would say, a real issue. Just because when our students are not aware of what they will be able to do tomorrow, in 2 days, in 3 days, in a month, they get some kind of demotivated. So how do we usually assess progress? We use common European framework of references, right? Starting from A1 for elementary and moving on to C2 for those who have mastered the language. And this distance between B1, right, and B2 and C1, this distance is really, really long. So a lot of our students get a feeling they are stuck, or even that they are moving backwards. And a student can come to you and say, I've been learning for so long, I had classes with you for so long, why is my speaking still at B1? Why is that? And then we kind of try to make up some kind of motivation and say it's not B1, it's B1 plus, or B1 plus plus, or for lower levels I usually use A1, A3 pluses, A1 3 pluses, or something like this. Pearson has a fantastic solution to this issue, and it is a global scale of English. If you look at it, it is connected to common European framework of references, but it has a more granular approach. So, by the way, what is really fantastic about it, and what I really like about it, is that it starts at 10. which means at any level, right, we have some knowledge of English, we have some ability of speaking English, and it finishes at 90 because the sky's the limit. One more fantastic way of motivating our students to speak and to acquire and learn language in general is taking international exams. And here you can see some stars of Pearson Test of English, which is really focused on communicative approach. And LCCI, it is for those who need a business English. Really fantastic, really communicative. Come on in, please. In my mid-20s, I had an experience of taking piano lessons. And, I went through all these exercises and taking classes and etc. and blah, blah, blah. But still, today I cannot play the piano. Piano or music is often compared to English. And the question here is, why don't our students play the piano, or why don't they speak? And the answer I think all of us have is that they are all really concerned about what is called the language barrier. And we teachers need to help them first understand what the language barrier is about, and second, how to break it. Second, it's a mistake I, as a teacher, I do not open a door for conversation. In other words, I do not create an environment and need where students will be able and will be enthusiastic to speak. And the third point here is I, as a teacher, and a lot of my colleagues are trying to reinvent the wheel, right? We all want to be creative and doing it on a daily basis. We are reinventing the wheel instead of trusting the expert. What our students want, right, is some kind of a balanced course with some can-do objectives, ideally. This Total English is fantastic because when I show it to my students, I always stress these can-do objectives. So after the first class, or by the end of the first week, or by the end of the module, you will be able to start a conversation with a stranger, or do this and that. Right? And then, at the end of the lesson, of the month, of the week, I check, can we do this now? And if they have written it down, right, and if at the end I kind of ask them for this feedback, they are really proud of saying, yes, now I can start a conversation with a stranger, and actually I did it yesterday. And what I actually also like about a lot of textbooks and Total English in particular is this how to box this. And the thing I really admire is this lifelong learning, with a lot of useful ideas about how to move language usage from the classroom to the real world, and they can come up with their own ideas and to do that. Okay. If you look at this question, how many indoor and outdoor activities do you know? Do you think it's a good question? Demotivating. Why is that demotivating?
Because if you don't know any, you're like, I'm stupid, I don't know any.
Okay, let's imagine you ask this question after pre-learning outdoor and indoor activities. Still, is it a good question?
It's not a question.
Sorry, I'm not sure.
It's not a good because it's more just enumeration.
Absolutely, fantastic, absolutely. So, in other words, this question, which looks absolutely okay, right, from the first side, we have pre-taught indoor and outdoor activities. Now we want them to speak about what they have learned. What result do they get? 5. I know 5. There is no need to speak, right? And what can be done here? Which activities to decide? This is our favorite personalization, right? So if you look through your teaching materials, you will see a lot of such, I think, things. Some more examples. This is a warmer. When I, every time on Monday, I have a question with a student and I want kind of to tune him into speaking English, what I do, I ask, how was your weekend? If I want him or her to speak a little bit more, I ask some additional follow-up questions. Did you have a good weekend? What was the best thing about your weekend? But actually here, after asking 3 questions, the answer I get is 3 sentences. That's not what I was looking for. So we can look at each and every task we give to our students from the perspective of what result, what outcome we want to get. And for instance, with this last weekend or holiday question, we can divide them into groups, right? And ask one student to speak in detail and the other student to react, making it more like a real-life conversation. Do you ever use these unscrambling exercises? Okay, do they work well with you, students? Okay. Well, unfortunately, with my students, they have never worked. So the topic is interesting, right? Facebook profile photos. So what solution I come up with here, using a little bit of creativity, right? Is to choose, before doing this actual task, write down a question. And if we speak about teenagers, they do not tend to use Facebook, they tend to use VK, right? So if you were going to upload a profile photo to your VK account, which one would you choose? Pretty portrait, strange close-up, party shot? By the way, does anybody know what the strange close-up is? Here is the answer. Okay, a lot of my students don't, right? So in other words, if you look at the activity and think of how you can present it, it can benefit a lot. One more game I like is taboos. It really does a lot for students to speak. And with picture description. Pictures are said to be a fantastic way to motivate our students to speak. But the original task here is work in pairs and look at the photos. What relationship do you think people in each photo might have? So if I look at this fantastic picture, I would say they are friends. No speaking, right? Not that speaking we were looking for. So if you try to come up with several questions you might want your students to answer before actually moving on to making a conclusion about the relationship between people, they can benefit a lot from it. I do love mingling activities, and everybody stands up, right, and communicates. And after teaching grammar, for instance, this dependent prepositions exercises, you can ask the students to mingle, right, to discuss these questions. And important thing here is to set the right task. For instance, to divide them into 3 or 4 groups, and then ask them to share and compare their findings, right? One person might be nominated to summarize to the rest of the class, and as a follow-up activity, you can ask them to write a report, a letter, and a mail, so on. Well, as I've been teaching business English for many years, I do love doing cases with students, and this is one of my favorite cases from Market Leader. It's about ice cream. If you personalize the case and not just ask them to do it, but then ask what is going on in your company, what can be done to improve, they really work. And the problem or the issue we face when we teach groups is that usually we get mixed ability groups. Students love to watch videos and to speak after watching a video. But what if we have a group of, say, B1 plus students, but we work for a company, right? And the students can be of different levels, and we have to teach them all. Not to have this issue with one part of the class working hard and the other part of the class sleeping. We can grade the task and come up with different ideas, right? Here is a video. So the original task was the video on how to give feedback, and the original task, like, use phrases to give positive feedback to 3 of your classmates. For A1 or A2 students, the task might be just to understand the general idea, right? And then to have some kind of simplified questions. And Quizlet is fantastic tool for learning vocabulary. You can get it for Speak Out directly from my English lab. There are 7 options of how you can teach vocabulary, and while teaching these parts, I usually do some kind of speaking activities, starting from questions to storytelling. And there is a fantastic task in Speak Out Advanced, though I suppose you can use it with different levels of students, which is sentence extension. If we take a simple sentence of saying, I like coffee, and ask a lot of additional questions to it, can we try to do it with you? Would you join me?
Sure.
But not sure?
Sure.
Sure. Okay. Say, do you like coffee?
So, what is my temperature with your instruction?
Just answer my questions.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. So, do you like drinking coffee in the morning?
It depends.
It depends. When do you like drinking coffee?
Usually during the lunchtime.
Okay, so I like drinking coffee during the lunchtime. Which coffee do you like?
Latte or cappuccino.
So I like drinking latte or cappuccino during lunch. Who do you drink it with?
Mostly alone.
I like drinking latte or cappuccino during lunch with alone. Where do you usually drink it?
Usually I go to a coffee shop around the corner.
So during lunch, I usually go to a coffee shop around the corner where I like drinking coffee alone. Where do you prefer to sit and drink your coffee?
I'd go for the window table.
So usually during the lunch, I go to a cafe around the corner, and I usually sit near the window, right? Near the window, and I like drinking coffee there. So actually, you can take any exercise, any sentence, and do it this way with your students. Thank you very much for your attention.
Okay, thank you for your wonderful presentation. And we have got a few minutes for questions. So if you have a question, put up your hand. Put the microphone very close.
Some students ask to correct each mistake. What would you recommend? And usually high-level students ask to correct all their mistakes. They need it for their work.
Right, it's typical situation, of course. When I was speaking about correcting mistakes, I was mostly speaking about lower level students. With high level students, if you correct each and every, while speaking, right? If you correct each and every mistake, it would depend on what kind of speaking task you give them, what result you want. If we, for example, if they are preparing to give a presentation, usually they have a text, right? They write. So there maybe a good idea would be to record them and ask them to look for their mistakes themselves. If it is just describe this picture, I usually have an agreement that I would not interrupt them all the time, right? I write down if it is a one-to-one student, and then we discuss everything in detail. I give some kind of follow-up activities. If we are speaking about a group, you can either write down the mistakes yourself, or you can use what is called peer correction to ask other students kind of to notice the mistakes their co-students are making, and then, for example, on a blackboard to write them down and to discuss them.
Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
And maybe one more question. Have we got any? All right. Okay, so thank you for your fantastic presentation.